In this video, we're going to talk about choosing a hosting company for your WordPress website. Now, this is definitely an area where when people are starting out, they can get frustrated and a little bit confused because there's a lot of terms that are thrown around when you're talking about hosting. And there's also a large disparity between what the companies offer and what their pricing are from the bottom to the top. So, when you're doing your own research, you can find hosting that is incredibly cheap for $1 or $2 a month. And then there's, mid-range packages, and then there's some dedicated service and such which can range thousands of dollars per month, and it can be kind of difficult to see where you fit on that table as far as what your needs are. So I'm going to talk a little bit about things that we want to avoid and what the pricing really should be for a new website, for a WordPress website or a marketing website and things like that. But before we get into that, I want to kind of try to reduce the amount of apprehension that you might feel about choosing your hosting company, because yes, it is a big decision. It does have a lot of effect on your website. But what we've done is we've removed a lot of the bad options or the potentially bad options. And so the hosting companies that we cover are all good options. There really is no bad choice here. They vary slightly in price and what they offer and what their focus is. And so your decision after this tutorial is to kind of decide the hosting company that's going to work best for you and your needs. So the first thing is there are no bad options here. I'm only going to recommend, and we're only going to cover solid hosting companies that are going to allow you the potential to grow as a business and for your website to be successful. We won't recommend any hosting company that would end up being a mistake. So that's the first thing. The second thing I want to talk about is that moving hosting companies, it used to be kind of a big deal. There's a lot of tasks involved, but at this point, with the way that the technology has grown, changing your website host, especially if you're building your websites with LattePress and we've set it up kind of correctly and using Cloudflare for DNS management and stuff like that. Moving your website from one host to another is now incredibly simple. You can get it done in 30 minutes or less, and we're going to have tutorials that cover that. So if for whatever reason you're not satisfied, completely satisfied with your hosting company, you're going to be able to change that decision at any time. So just kind of keep that in mind, that first of all, there's no bad options, and two, even if you're not happy, you can change, and it's not going to be this big, monumental nightmare. So before I get into the companies that we actually cover, I want to talk a little bit about what we want to avoid. Now, if you don't care about any of that and you just want to skip to the comparison and the recommendations, I'll put a timestamp up on the screen so you can skip to that point. But for everybody else, I just want to talk a little bit about shared hosting or budget hosting and why those are services we want to avoid, so you can understand a little bit about the pricing differences and just the service differences, really. So what shared hosting is, or what budget hosting is they, especially for a lot of people that are doing this for the first time when they're doing their research, they're attracted to these companies because they offer incredibly low prices with seemingly unlimited resources, because they'll offer packages for $2 or $5 or $3 a month, and they'll say things like unlimited disk space and unlimited bandwidth. Right? So disk space, that's obviously just the amount of space on the server that you have to store your files. That's fairly easy for anybody to understand, just like your hard drive on your computer. They're going to allocate a certain amount of space and you can fill that up with your files. Now, the thing about WordPress websites and most marketing websites, even websites with a little bit of functionality, they're actually not that big. They can take up a couple gigabytes. If you have movies or images and things like that, a lot of that stored, maybe it takes up a little bit more. But generally, for a WordPress website, especially if you're following our tutorials and we cover things like the proper way to stream videos and stuff like that, then you're not going to need the 50 or the 100 or the 150 or the unlimited amount of disk space. And so that's really, it's nice to have, but it's completely unnecessary. So the value isn't really added by them giving you that. And the other thing that they offer is unlimited bandwidth. Now, when they say that your bandwidth is unlimited, it's kind of a play on words because it makes you think that you now have infinite bandwidth or infinite resources. So first, let me tell you what bandwidth is. So bandwidth is the data that is transferred between your website or your server and users or yourself. So when you're uploading your website for the first time, or you're uploading images to your website, or you're adding content, you're using up a little bit of data transfer or bandwidth, right? But mainly your bandwidth is the amount of data transferred between your website and the people that visit your website. So every time somebody visits your website, think of them as downloading your content, and that download transfer is counted as bandwidth. And so bandwidth limits essentially limit the amount of people that can come to your website, and depending, of course, on the size of your pages and the size of your content, that can be more or less every month. And so bandwidth is quite important. But when they say unlimited bandwidth, they don't actually mean that you have unlimited bandwidth. They mean that they're not going to put limits on your bandwidth. So why is this a problem? With shared hosting, the reason it's called shared hosting is that you're actually sharing that server with, could be hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of other websites. And how they get away with that is they're gambling on the fact that your website is not going to be successful. So they assume that somebody who is looking for the cheapest possible hosting option is usually going to make those same kind of decisions in other parts of their business, and the chance or the potential of them being successful and actually utilizing a lot of resources is quite small. And so they're gambling on that idea that, yeah, we're going to give them everything unlimited because they're never going to use it, because they're never going to be successful. And the majority of the time that gamble works out for them, because the majority of websites using shared hosting, in addition to trying to save everywhere they can, even to the detriment of their own website, also run into a lot of other issues, which I'll talk about in a moment. And so what happens is, if you have all these people on a website and you're sharing those resources, it's kind of like if you were renting a room in a house and someone said, we're not going to limit the amount of people you can bring over, you can have as many people over as you want. Well, that sounds great until the guy who rents the room next to you has 150 people over. All of a sudden the hallways are completely filled up with people. There's a tremendous amount of noise, trash is being thrown everywhere. And so while it's great that it's not unlimited, it affects everybody around you. So if a website that's on your server suddenly gets a traffic spike and starts getting thousands of people from a Reddit link or something like that, not only are the limited resources of the shared hosting going to cause performance issues for them, their website's going to slow down, very likely it's going to crash altogether and shut down, but it's also going to affect everybody else on that server. They're not separate as they should be. And so when one starts getting a tremendous amount of traffic and slowdown starts, so does everybody else on that shared hosting. And if you've kind of researched this, or if you've been in business online, then you'll understand the fact that if your website crashes during a traffic spike, it's very difficult to get those people back. It's very difficult to recreate that scenario. And so we want to make sure that our hosting can provide the performance and the speed and the security that we need in order to be successful, so that when we are successful and our marketing strategies work, our website, our hosting company is going to kind of back us up on that. And so, and it works also the same with security, in the sense that if somebody isn't as careful as us with their website, they're not keeping it up to date, or their website gets hacked and they're able to access it the hackers are able to access it at a server level. And there's a lot of ways that you can do that. They can also affect your website, so that infection can literally spread to everybody else. Now, normally when servers are set up properly and the hosting company has specific limits and separates individual clients a little bit more, it wouldn't really affect you. But because the shared hosting, people that are purchasing it are looking for a budget, but also these companies are looking to kind of save every single penny they can and fit as many people onto a server as possible. So the software is usually not very good. It usually has its security flaws. It's not updated as much as it should be. There's very little, attention paid to whether or not people are, having the best security policies for their websites and stuff like that. And so really what you're getting is a bargain bin service with the promise of being a great service. And so when it comes to shared hosting and when it comes to these budget hosts out there, I want to kind of kill off the idea that really cheap hosting is even an option, because it's not. If you're serious about starting a business or any kind of website on the internet, then you're going to want a host that's going to create a good environment for that, and also when you are successful is going to back you up. So, and normally when we talk about bandwidth limits, try to keep in mind that when you're with a real hosting company, if they give you, say, 50 gigabytes of bandwidth per month. If you go over that, your website doesn't shut down suddenly. You'll get an email, you'll get notified, they're going to let you know, and normally they'll charge you, let's say 2 cents per gigabyte above that, or whatever the overage charge may be. Some companies don't even worry about it. They just, if it happens a couple months in a row, they'll, notify you and say, hey, maybe you should upgrade your package. But your website doesn't go down. And so they set specific limits that are within a package, but they don't punish you for being successful either. They'll just say, okay, well, you've used, 10 gigabytes extra, that's going to be an extra 20 cents on your bill, or whatever it is. So it's not really the nightmare that shared hosts would like to pretend it is. So now that we've talked a little bit about what we don't want, I want to talk about what we do want. One of the other issues about shared hosting is that they have hosting that is kind of set up for everybody, every kind of system, every kind of CMS out there. Since we're going to be focusing solely on WordPress, what we want to focus on is getting a hosting company that is also focused on WordPress. That way their server environment, their software, their whole company is going to be focused on the same platform that we are. It also means that their support and their staff are going to be fully aware of how WordPress works and any problems it may have, and they're going to be able to help us take care of that. So the hosts that we're going to be covering are all managed WordPress hosts. And so what that means is that their entire setup is, configured and focused towards WordPress, and also they understand WordPress, so they can help us make sure that we're keeping our websites updated and we're doing everything we need to in order to be successful. So I want to talk about some of the features that we're looking for as well, and all of the companies that we recommend have these features, right? So there's two things that people are really worried about when they start a website, and it's important to talk about these during the hosting stage because, it's going to affect you, and I'll explain why. So two of the biggest things are performance and security. So we'll tackle performance first. And how we go, when I say performance, I'm specifically talking about caching, because there's a lot of things that we're going to do to help our website be, really fast and really responsive. But when it comes to our host, caching is really the thing that I'm talking about. And what caching is WordPress is dynamic in the sense that you're not going to be coding anything as you go through these LattePress tutorials. We're going to be using back-end editors, and we're going to be using themes and front-end builders, and they have theme templates and files. And basically what that means is that when somebody loads up your website, right, the templates in the files of WordPress itself, in the theme files, it's going to dictate what happens when somebody loads up your website. So the first thing that happens when you load up your website, the template files are going to say, the first thing we do is grab the header. And so it grabs the top of the website. And in that header, there's, let's say, a logo. And so it grabs the logo from the database. And now it says, well, now we need to load up the menu. And so it goes into the database and it grabs your menu, and it grabs your menu items, and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We go down the page. It grabs your content and your images and your widgets and everything else, right? And so there's a certain amount of time as these functions are processed. It takes a certain amount of time. Now we're talking milliseconds, but when you have tens of thousands of people coming to your website at once, hopefully, then this can have an impact on the server and the website. And so what we're talking about when we're talking about caching is when all of those things are done, the system then exports an HTML, CSS, and JavaScript code. So it exports the result, right? And that result generally doesn't change. And so what we can do is we can take a snapshot of that result, and we can show that to users. So the first time a user visits your website, we take a snapshot of what that looks like, and then by delivering just the copy to all their users after that, we remove the need or the necessity for your WordPress website to run through all those functions every single time and to run through all those processes every single time. And so when you update your website, we then take a fresh copy. So nobody's seeing old content, because when you update, so does the copy. And so we just save a lot of bandwidth and transfer and performance by delivering cached copies of your pages. And with WordPress, there's a lot of plugins that can create this functionality for you. They all work a little bit differently. They can take time to configure, and the really thing, they're working at a plugin level, and so they're limited as to what they can do really. And so what we want to do is we want to put the brunt of that responsibility on our host, and we want it to be part of the service that they offer. And so the hosting companies that we're talking about or that we cover they actually handle caching and performance for us. So that is an entire area of building websites that we're not going to have to worry about. Now, I'll put up tutorials covering that so you understand how to do it. So if you're really here to learn about those kind of things, I'll show you how to do caching. I'll cover the plugins and stuff like that. That'll be under optional tutorials. But when we're creating our websites that are actually going to be live, that are going to have people visiting it, we want to have that responsibility be on the side of the hosting company. And so like I say, so we're not even going to worry about installing plugins. All of our caching is going to be happening automatically at a server or a host level, so they can really, there's a tremendous amount of value from doing it essentially from the hosting side rather than installing it on, on a plugin on our website. So we're never going to have to worry about performance. Our websites are going to load lightning quick. The cache is going to automatically be flushed. And when I say flushed, I mean the new copies are going to be taken when we update our website. So all that's going to be done from our host. So that's performance, and that is a big worry or a big stress that we're never going to have to worry about. So the other thing is security, and this is a big thing because, obviously we want our websites to be safe, we want them to be secure, we don't want to get hacked, we want our customer data to be safe, and that's a whole area aside from website development. Security is a whole separate area, and it's a lot to think about, and it's a lot to worry about. And so again, wouldn't it be great if our host kind of just took care of all that for us? So there's a lot of very specific things that we're going to be doing as we build websites to make sure that our website is secure. But the real, security as far as, keeping all the security updates, everything up to date when it comes to having a firewall, when it comes to protecting our files, when it comes to, all those different things that normally a developer would do or would set up when building a website. Our host is going to do all of that for us, and it's going to be all included in the price. We don't have to worry about security plugins. We don't have to worry about firewalls. We don't have to worry about any of that stuff. So one of the main benefits, I think, of the hosting companies that we're going to cover is they all of them take care of security and performance for our websites for us. And because they're all focused on WordPress, they're specifically geared towards, improving performance and improving security for WordPress. So that is a huge, a lot of work really that we're putting on somebody else that's going to be included in our hosting price. And I just want to cover quickly a couple final things. The next thing is WordPress updates. So WordPress, like any other software, and including the plugins and different themes that we use, they need to be kept up to date. So just like Windows updates, when they come out, what happens when Microsoft gets a lot of flack, right, for being insecure or all these other things, because a lot of these older computers can get hacked and stuff like that. But really what happens is that when Microsoft releases an update for Windows, at that point, hackers can go through that update and reverse engineer and figure out where the holes were. Now, the holes are fixed, but they're only fixed if the user on the computer has updated and applied that security patch. And WordPress, just like anything else, works like that. So as WordPress updates or has security releases or plugins or themes are updated, from our side, we want to make sure that we're keeping that stuff up to date. And I'm going to show you how to do that. It's very, very simple. But our host is going to watch out for that too. And they're going to watch out for any kind of important security updates and anything that's really, really vital. They're going to update for us. So it's like another set of eyes that are kind of keeping out, and they're in the know, and they know when there's these 0-day vulnerabilities that come out and things like that, and they're going to be able to apply that and have our back for us, right? So that's just another benefit of having a hosting company that focuses on WordPress is they're going to be able to help us most keep our website safe through these different updates. And then when something goes wrong, they're also handling our security. And then if everything goes wrong, we can also restore our sites. And I'll talk about that as well in a minute. And the last thing I want to talk about before we talk about the specific companies that we cover is that all three of these companies have absolutely excellent support. They have, WordPress specific people who understand, who have worked with WordPress for a long time, that can answer your questions. I've dealt with all three of the companies' support, and they're all fantastic. So to sum up, the reason we've picked these companies is that they focus on WordPress. They do things that I think are important, like handling security, handling performance, focusing on WordPress. All three of them have an integration with Let's Encrypt. So Let's Encrypt if you've been researching the internet, or you've been going around, or you've been shopping on the internet, you probably noticed that some sites start out the URL HTTP, and some websites start out the URL HTTPS. Maybe they have a green padlock, that kind of thing. And what that is that's an SSL certificate, and that means that the data transferred between the user and the website is secured. Right? And so that's something that we really want to have on our websites, even if we're not specifically selling something, even if we're not taking money and doing transactions. We want to have an SSL certificate because it increases users' trust. There's a lot of also benefits when it comes to page rank and search engines and stuff like that. They're going to start giving preferential treatment to people who have SSL certificates. So we definitely want to have that. And normally that it's kind of a pain to install and set up, and it's an extra yearly cost. And the nice thing about our hosts is that they're all integrated with Let's Encrypt, and Let's Encrypt creates completely free SSL certificates that you can use. And these are secure enough to do things like store transactions and take people's money and all that kind of stuff. And so there's nothing wrong with the strength of it. They're free because they believe that everybody should have one of these SSL certificates. And so our hosting companies all integrate with Let's Encrypt. So you're going to be able to get that SSL certificate for your website. So now that we've gone through all the benefits, now that we've talked about things that we want to avoid, let's talk about the companies that we actually recommend. Right? So the 3 companies that we're going to talk about are Kinsta, Flywheel, and Pantheon. So the first company that we're going to cover is Pantheon, and what Pantheon is great for is it has a lot of tools and features built in for developers. So their focus is actually on development companies. They're focused on helping small or medium-sized development companies build applications using their tools, and they also provide then the hosting after that. So the reason that I've included it in this list is for a few different reasons. The first thing is that I feel like the development tools that they offer can also be beneficial for you if you're learning how to build websites, especially if you're planning on, after learning WordPress, moving past that and also learning things like coding, whether it be HTML or PHP or JavaScript or whatever it is. Then those tools can be really useful for you. So one of the tools that it has is a repository, a code repository. Now, developers can do this using third-party tools. Our company does, but it's a very nifty tool to kind of have as part of your hosting company. So basically what that means is they're going to track changes to your code. Now, if you're working with a developer or you're working with a development team, this can be really nice to be able to track what changes have been put on your website and when they've been applied, and they have different branches, so multiple developers can be working on the same thing, and you can kind of track those changes. So they have those built in. Now, this is kind of the back end or the dashboard of one of my sites. It's a temporary site which will be deleted in a couple minutes for one of our tutorials. And so you can kind of see, I'll just click on this. You can see that it's telling me, the different files that have been changed. If I click on that, I can actually see the code. So what's been added, what's been removed. And so if you're working with a developer, if that's your plan, if your plan is to build your website, build the front end, add in your functionality, but you're planning on saving money that way and then spending that money on a developer to build custom functionality, then Pantheon might be a solid choice for you because they have this Git repository built in. They have this code tracking abilities. They have a lot of extra things like showing you different errors on your website and all this other stuff. And they also have all of our hosts have what's called staging. And what that is, it is a copy of our website. So when we first build our website, we're going to build it on a staging server. So this is where we do all of our work. And then there's a live server or live edition, and that's where we push all of our changes, and that's when people can actually see it. So while the website's up after we've launched, we're still going to be doing changes and adding to it on our staging site, and then we push changes to our live when they're ready. That way our user experience isn't interrupted. Now, Pantheon actually adds in something extra, and this is really cool. Again, if you're working with developers, they have a test environment in the middle. And what that means is they're going to grab, with that test environment, you can grab all the latest code from your staging environment. You can grab all the latest data from your live site. So let's say you had a discussion forum. So people are going to be adding to that discussion forum every day, and maybe you're testing out new features with that, and you want to be able to grab that newest data and use it with the latest code. And what we can do with that test environment is combine those two things. So again, this is really nifty or really handy if you're working with a development team. So that's kind of the selling point of Pantheon, is if you're going to be working with a team, then they have a lot of great tools in there. So if you're going to be working with a developer, you may want to talk to them or include them in this decision about hosting, and talk about whether or not they want to do Pantheon or one of our other options. The other great thing about Pantheon, and the reason that I really recommend them specifically for those of you that are only taking LattePress to learn about how to build websites. So if you don't have a specific website in mind, if you don't have a specific business that you're launching, but rather you're just learning this to have those skills, then Pantheon actually has a fantastic service for you guys. If you sign up for the agency's account, which is the link that that our button will lead to, you're going to have a certain amount, somewhere between 12 and 20 sandbox websites. And what does that mean? That means you can have a bunch of different WordPress installs that you're working on and building with and playing with and experimenting with, and you can have those for an unlimited amount of time, accessible through a staging URL, and it's completely free. So what that means is you're going to be able to install one or more versions of WordPress, completely, play around with it, test out plugins, do all this kind of stuff, and those are time unlimited sandbox websites, and it's also completely free to use. So it makes for an excellent environment for learning, because you can really spin up WordPress websites, delete them when you're done with them. So for example, when I was doing these tutorials, or the tutorials, all the ones that you're going to view, I did a lot of them on Pantheon because it made it very easy to spin up a website, cover the tutorials, and then delete them afterwards. And it's completely free, and they're, like I said, they're time unlimited. So if you're specifically taking LattePress tutorials to learn how to build WordPress websites without a specific website in mind, then Pantheon really is going to be the best choice, because you get this kind of playground to play around with, and it's completely free. The one caveat to that I would say is, if you're going to be using it for an extended period of time, there's no rule or anything that says you have to do this, but if you're going to be using it for, say, 3, 4, 5 months, and you're going to be using a lot of resources to kind of play around, their introductory price is $25 a month. And I think that it would be nice if you signed up one of your sites or one of your accounts for that intro price, and just throw them that $25 a month, because I think that's a really good price for having kind of an unlimited playground to learn WordPress with. So you can definitely use it free, and I do recommend that if you're going to be specifically using LattePress to learn. But just if you're going to be doing it for an extended amount of time, then just throw them that $25 a month if you can afford it. And I've talked to them about maybe even setting up an account specifically for that, so maybe like a discounted package just for utilizing that environment. But until they do that, if and when they do that, then I would just say, just if you're going to be using it long term, throw them that $25 a month. But the point is that with their staging sites that they give those agencies accounts, it's a great way to learn and build without that time pressure, because you can kind of use them indefinitely without having to pay anything up front. So and the last thing is that I want to talk about is I mentioned that free SSL certificate. And with these guys, if we look at their pricing page, you can see that starting right at the $25 level, you can see this feature called Global CDN, and that service actually ties in two different things. It ties in a CDN, which is a content delivery network, and it also ties in that that SSL certificate from Let's Encrypt. So you'll be able to set that up right up on your website. So that's Pantheon. I'll just really give you a brief summary. So with Pantheon, the benefits are amazing developer tools. If you're going to be working with a developer, definitely have them check out Pantheon, see if those are things that they would be able to utilize, that they would get some workout, some great stuff from. The second is that test environment. So if you're going to be doing a lot of custom coding or a lot of custom plugins and stuff, that test environment is a great place to kind of test that out before it goes live. The free unlimited sandboxes with the agency's account if you're going to be focused just mainly on learning, and the SSL certificate with the global CDN and the Let's Encrypt SSL certificate. So those are all kind of great things. The pricing does start out at $25 a month for hosting. They have excellent performance. Their support staff are very qualified, really know what they're doing when it comes to WordPress, and so it's just a very excellent service altogether, all around. The one thing I do want to mention is backups. Backups are very important when you have a live site. The other options that I'm going to talk about, they all do automated daily backups. With Pantheon, if you are a free user, then you have to do backups manually. And so what I mean is there's a backup section here, and you have to manually go in and create a backup. They're not taken automatically every single day. So that's one con from Pantheon, is that unless, if you're paying for an account, you can schedule backups to happen automatically. While you're using that free account, make sure to go in there and do backups every time you've made substantial changes to your site, just because that's not done automatically. All right, so that's Pantheon, and I'll go through a longer summary at the end, but that's Pantheon for the moment. So the next service that I want to talk about is Flywheel, and Flywheel is another managed WordPress host, and they have all those features that I discussed. And what I really recommend Flywheel for is this. They have a package here, and I'll just switch over to monthly. So they have a tiny package, and it's priced at $15 a month. The thing to note with this is that does not come with a staging site. So it only has the live version. And so that, it's definitely a con if you're going to be doing a lot of changes to your website. If your website is strictly a marketing site and you would really just be changing content, then that's going to be less of an issue. But I would say that if you are creating a website that maybe it's your first website, or maybe you're just kind of getting into this and you want to try to keep costs low, then this does start out $15 a month, and they can handle simple marketing WordPress websites very easily. Now, the reason I say simple websites, not because Flywheel can't handle bigger websites, it certainly can, but when it comes to their next package up $30 a month, I feel like the last hosting company that we're going to talk about can do that better for the same price. And so I would say utilize Flywheel if there are a couple different things. Whether if you really need to keep costs low and that $15 is going to make a huge difference to you, then you're going to be fine on the tiny package. It doesn't have maybe the performance as some of the other hosting options that we cover, but it is a great service. It is great, very fast. The support is great. But it doesn't have that staging site. So I would say as an introductory hosting, then the $15 a month would be fine. But when you start to grow larger, you may want to consider moving to one of the other hosts, or even upgrading with Flywheel. But like I said, there's better value for the dollar with the last hosting company that I'm going to talk about in a second. So this is, if that $15 is really a huge deal, then you'll be okay with the tiny package to start out. And then as you grow and as your business starts to make profit, you can kind of move up. Now, Flywheel does have automated daily backups. They are managed WordPress hosting. They will help with your updates. They do handle performance and security. They have a hacker guarantee, which means that if the worst happens and your WordPress is completely hacked and destroyed, they will fix it for you. But with the daily automatic backups, it's almost kind of unnecessary, because there's a quick button to just restore your site. So you can actually fix your site on your own. In a matter of minutes, you can have your website back up. They do have the integration with Let's Encrypt and the SSL certificate, and generally they're just a really good WordPress host. I mean, that's the takeaway with Flywheel, is that they're a very solid, decent host with a great entry-level price. So if it's your first website, or if, let's say that you're creating a website and you're learning how to do this, but it's not specifically, let's say, an e-commerce store. Let's say that you're building a website for a local club or local community, or your business is focused locally, so you're probably never going to have more than a couple hundred people a month, then Flywheel's great for you, and that $15 package is going to be more than you're ever going to need, and you're going to have all those guarantees that working with Flywheel brings, like security and performance and stuff. Or say, if it's a gaming club or any kind of thing where if you did have any issues, it's not going to be the end of the world, because it's not necessarily a business that's going to lose thousands of dollars a day. Then Flywheel is a great option. So you can see here, this is kind of the dashboard for Flywheel, and I'll just click on backups really quick so you can see how this works. You'll see that it takes automatic backups every single day, and you can very easily download those backups or restore them. So Flywheel is a great option for WordPress websites if you don't need the developer tools of Pantheon, and it's either a starter site or a business that is focused locally, where you're probably never going to get more than a couple hundred people or something like that, and you just kind of need a website to be up, right? So the reason I say once you have your needs grow and you have that, you're ready to take that step to the $30 a month, and I would really recommend for the majority of you to do it this route, we have Kinsta. So that brings us into the last company that we're going to talk about, and that is Kinsta. So when we're talking about our plans, you can see that their starter package is $30 a month. And if that's the area that you're looking for, rather than upgrading or using that $30 package from Flywheel, I would absolutely recommend that you spend that $30 a month on Kinsta. Kinsta is the option that I'm going to recommend for most people. And the reason for that is it has been, since it launched, a premium WordPress host. It has by far the best performance, the best speed. Your pages are going to load up, absolutely instantly. Not that your pages would be slow on Flywheel and Pantheon. I mean, we're talking about a difference in milliseconds, but the power behind the setup of Kinsta is just absolutely amazing. It's all on the Google Cloud platform. It is incredibly fast. They have an amazing back-end interface for their dashboard. And now they used to charge $100 a month to start out to host with Kinsta, and it was very, very much worth it. But it was a little bit intimidating for maybe people that were starting their first website or their first business. They're not sure if it's going to be successful or when it's going to make money. And so that $100 a month was a little bit intimidating when there are cheaper options out there. It's definitely worth it, and it has been the host that I recommend to people for a long time. But now what they've gone and done is they've created entry-level packages at $30 and $60. So if you're creating your first WordPress website, you can start with Kinsta for $30 a month. And so that's why I would say, if you're in that area, if this is a business website, if this is something that you're going to be putting time and money into, and you're going to be having marketing strategies, then the best value for your dollar is going to be picking up at least this starter package with Kinsta. And then as you grow, they have packages that can accommodate you as you grow. But the the performance is by far the best. They have amazing tools. Their backend interface is really amazing. They do the automated daily backups, easy restore. They have the hacker guarantee, the SSL, and the Let's Encrypt integration. And with this new entry-level packaging or pricing, there really is no reason not to use Kinsta. And so it is going to be the service that I recommend for most people. For my own clients and my development company, I also recommend them to be hosting with Kinsta. So I would say, unless one of the other ones kind of fits your needs more, for your general user, for your general new business, I would say start out with a $30 plan at Kinsta and then grow. Now, one of the most amazing things about Kinsta, in addition to their amazing, great performance and their speed, is their support. So right in their dashboard, you're going to have a chat window that you can utilize, and you're going to have WordPress experts on the other end. And I don't just mean like people who know about WordPress. I mean, these guys know far more than I do. They know a ton about hosting and managing WordPress, and they also know everything about WordPress itself. So they're going to be able to very easily support you. And having that kind of at your fingertips, I got to say, especially if you're a new user and you're getting into this and you're kind of wary about forgetting things or not knowing everything, that is a tremendous value that can come with your hosting option, to have that level of support and experience behind you, just a couple keystrokes away. So I feel like that, and the performance and the speed, but also their amazing support and the interface that they have set up for that, really sets Kinsta far ahead of the rest. And now that they have this entry-level pricing at $30, I gotta say that there's really no reason not to use them. I would recommend them 99.9% of the time. So that is Kinsta. So we have 3 hosting options, and I'll just kind of go through a summary really quick, and then my recommendation for which one you should use depending on your situation, right? So we talked about Pantheon. Pantheon is our hosting company's focused. If you're going to be hiring a developer or working with a developer or a development team, I would say involve them in this discussion about hosting. Have them look at Pantheon, have them look at Kinsta, and talk to them about which one they would prefer to utilize for the hosting. And if we're not going to be using Pantheon, what tools are they going to be using to replace that functionality, right? So have that discussion with them and talk about it. But so if you're going to be working with a development team, Pantheon is definitely something to look at. If you're just going to be using LattePress tutorials to learn how to build WordPress websites, then those sandboxes available with the agency's account is definitely going to be a way to go, or something to think about. And again, if you use it long term, I do recommend just throwing them the $25 a month on one of your sites just to support them so they can continue that service as long as possible. And then all of the managed WordPress services we want, like the updates and the performance and security and SSL, all comes with Pantheon. The one con being just that you have to, if you have the backups, you have to do those manually. They don't have automated backups. So that is Pantheon, again, with Flywheel. If this is a website that is not specifically going to be a business website, if it's going to be a local club or a community, or if it's going to be a business that is focusing on local business and you just kind of want to have that website up so you're not expecting thousands of people, you just need a website up that's going to be representing your business, and you'd like to save money if you can, then that tiny package at Flywheel probably would be enough. So go ahead and you can sign up with them, get started. You're not going to have that staging site, but generally you're probably just going to be updating content, so you probably won't need it. And you do get all those other great managed WordPress features from them: automatic daily backups, performance, security, SSL certificate, great support, very good performance and speed. It's not bad by any means. And but I would say, if you're starting out or you're focusing locally or you're not expecting tons of traffic, then that $15 a month is going to be fine. And then the one that I recommend for most people, which is Kinsta, and that is, they have that great package at $30 a month, entry level, amazing performance, amazing speed, amazing security, amazing support. I can't say that word enough because it really is a fantastic opportunity now that they have that entry level. I would just say, if that fits in your budget, if this website is going to be really important to you, go for that $30 a month package, and I guarantee you're going to be saving yourself a lot of headaches by just going with the best right from the beginning, right? So the only other difference I want to talk about really quickly is getting started, right? And so with Pantheon, we have our Pantheon for Agencies account. That's free to start. You can go through the whole training and build your website without paying anything. You don't have to pay anything to Pantheon until you bring a website live. At that point that you associate a domain with it and your website is live, that's when you would pay, starting out at that $25 a month package. So with Flywheel, every new site that you create, it's free to create an account on Flywheel. And when you create a website, you actually have 2 weeks before you have to pay. So you can build that website. Certainly with our tutorials, you can build it in 2 weeks, and you don't have to pay until that 2 weeks is up or until you go live, whichever one comes first. So you have that 2-week window. With Kinsta, you pay upfront right away, starting out at $30 a month. They don't have any kind of trial time or anything like that, but the service is just fantastic. And as soon as you sign up, you can add a site and it'll create that staging and live environment for you, or the live environment, and then you can create a staging environment, and I'll show you how to do that. So that's basically it. So I would say Kinsta for most people, that's where the best value for your dollar is going to be. Unless you are working with a development team or you're just here to learn, and then check out Pantheon, have them check out Pantheon as well. And lastly, we have Flywheel, which is our kind of introductory local or smaller site focused with a lower entry-level pricing. But really, all three hosts are fantastic. I can't say enough good things about them. There's very few minuses on each, and so you're going to have a great experience no matter which host you pick. And if you aren't happy with the host that you picked for any reason, please remember again that you will be easily able to transfer from one host to another, and our tutorials do cover that for these specific hosts. All of the packages for these specific hosts are also in our system. We keep track of that. So when you see some of these other ones, these bulk packages where you can have 2 or 3 or 10, when you get to that point, if you build multiple websites using LattePress and you can save money by upgrading to a bulk package, the system, our LattePress, will let you know. It'll say, hey, I've noticed you've built 5 websites, or let's say that you've built 3 websites or 2 websites. So even with Kinsta, when you go for your second website, it's going to say, hey, make sure to upgrade to this pro, make sure to upgrade to this business. With Flywheel, if you decide to do all your websites on Flywheel, you can see that they have bulk plans. So this one, for example, allows for 10 WordPress installs. So when you build that 10th site, we're going to say, hey, make sure you upgrade to this freelance account. So all of that's tracked in LattePress, so don't worry too much about that. We'll let you know when it's time to upgrade. So that is our Choose a Host tutorial. I hope you're feeling pretty confident about the hosting option that you want to choose. If you have any questions or if there's any information that you would like, please do go ahead and post in our forums, and me or somebody else will try to help you out.